I'm Cindy Winget, the author of The Apparition, and welcome to my channel. So I've been sick, unfortunately, so if my voice sounds a little bit funny, I apologize. I also apologize that I didn't get a video out last Friday because I was on vacation to St. George, so I wasn't available. But going forward, I do have a new plan for this year. Normally, I have a video go out every Friday, but I think I'm going to switch things up a little bit and only have 3 videos a month come out. And the biggest reason for that is because I was looking forward to the day when my children were all in school, and so then I would have a little more extra time to write because I really enjoy writing. It's a passion of mine since as long as I can remember. But unfortunately, I also started my YouTube video right about the time that they started school, and that has eaten up all of my time. And so all the time that I was going to devote to writing has been devoted to my channel, and I haven't found any extra time to write. And that makes me exceedingly sad. And so just for my own well-being, my own mental health, my own desires and goals and wishes, I'm going to only have 3 videos come out each month so that last week I can spend writing instead of editing. So that's the plan going forward. Hopefully it doesn't make you too upset, but that's what we're going with for now. So in this video, we're going to be doing a Wintry Reads recommendation video, but also combine it with a TBR for January, because in the month of January, I just love to read all the snowy books. So they're kind of one and the same. So I don't want to show you a bunch of wintry books and then say this is my TBR and it's the exact same book. So we're just going to combine them. So I'm going to start with the books that I've already read and is just a Wintry Reads, and then I'll get into my TBR. So we're going to start out with a few YA books, the first one being Snowdrowned. And you might be a little bit surprised that this is on this list because this was on my worst books of the year list. But it wasn't because it was a hated book. It was just because it was just okay, but it wasn't something that I truly hated or thought was badly written or anything like that. And so this could work for you, even though it didn't quite work for me. And so that's why this is on this list. But if you like things having to do with mysteries and cult vibes and all that, then I think this would be right up your alley, because this is about this girl who goes on this island, and there's this mysterious family that everybody kind of skirts around talking about, and she ends up meeting the son of this family, and they kind of start this love affair, minus the sex, but you know what I mean. Like, she starts to fall for him, but then different bad or mysterious things start to crop up, and she's wondering if there's something going on this island that people don't want to talk about. And then the next YA book is called Don't Let the Cold In. This is about this girl whose mother is getting married to this other girl's father, and so they're going off on their honeymoon, and they don't want to go with them because and they're teenagers now, and so the parents are like, okay, well, maybe you're old enough to stay by yourself. And so the one girl and her father, every winter they go to this cozy cabin in the woods, and so she's like, well, just let us go there on our own while you do your honeymoon. And the parents think that this would be a great opportunity for these 2 girls who are now going to become sisters to be able to bond, because they don't really care for each other at the minute. And so they're hoping that will change while they're on their honeymoon. But as you can imagine, these 2 girls being left alone on a mountain in the winter is maybe not the best thing. And they end up having an unexpected guest, and they hear different noises outside in the snowstorm and all this stuff. And so maybe they're not as safe as they thought they were going to be. Okay, so this next one is highly obvious, so I'm not going to say a whole ton about it because I'm sure you've already heard of this book, but I'm talking about Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. And this was pretty popular a couple of years ago, so I'm sure you've seen it, but it's kind of one of those Agatha Christie type murder mystery books, going back to the old detective plots. And this also breaks the fourth wall, which some people like and some people don't, and it's said to be a little bit comedic. So I actually read the second one in this series, Everybody on This Train is a Suspect, and I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't like the best thing ever, but I thought it was decent. But when I went back to read this one, even though it's more highly regarded, I just couldn't get into it and I ended up DNFing it. So I don't know, it's just not quite up my alley, but a lot of people love this book, so that's why I'm recommending it to you if you haven't checked it out yet. And then we have Secret of Secrets by Dan Brown. This is his newest release that just came out in September, and I personally am a fan of Dan Brown. I know a lot of people give him flack. I'm not really sure why. I've seen people on Quora and stuff saying that he's this terrible writer, and yeah, maybe he's not the best writer in the world, but I've read a lot of books that aren't the best writer in the world and they're still enjoyable. And he's still a good storyteller. So I don't know why he gets so much hate. But for me personally, I like Dan Brown. I like his books. And this was no exception. I thought it was pretty much like his other ones. So if you like his other Robert Langdon books, then I think you would like this one because it very much follows the same, not only character, but like the same plot devices and the same rhythm and the same mystery and the same style and all of that. So if you've consistently liked all of his novels, then I think you'll like this one. It talks about being cold. It talks about snow, and so this is a good one to pick up during this time of year. And then we have A Killing Cold by Kate Alice Marshall, and I read this one last year, I believe, and this is another one where it didn't completely blow me away, but it was fun, and it does definitely have the winter vibes because we have this woman who is going up to meet her boyfriend's family up at this cabin retreat, and there's all the snow, and she's nervous about meeting these people because she wants them to like her, but there's this one cabin that's part of their group of cabins that they own, but it's been shuttered, it's been neglected because I guess the grandfather fell off the roof, and so people think that it has these bad memories attached to it. But she's bored one day and she ends up going and exploring this abandoned cabin, and she comes across this picture, and it's a picture of her when she's a kid. And so she's like, why is this here? Why does this family have a picture of me? So she's trying to figure out what's going on. So like I said, it's not my favorite book of the year, but I did enjoy my time with it. I thought it was a decent read, even if not a favorite. And then we have The Gathering by C.J. Tudor, and this is a vampire novel, and it's very modern, and I thought it was very unique. And this is set in a world where people know about vampires, but they understandably feel a little bit uncomfortable around them, and there's a little bit of bias against them, and so they've kind of been delegated to the woods, like, this is your spot, and then the humans are going to be over here, and we're just not going to mix. But there's a murder in this small Alaskan town, and they immediately jump to the conclusion that it's a vampire. But our main character is the detective that's on the case, and she thinks that there might be something else going on. She's not 100% sure that this is vampires, but I really enjoyed this one. I thought this was a really good one. And then we have With a Vengeance by Riley Sager, and I was actually surprised to learn that this was a winter read. So when you're thinking being on a train and going on vacations and stuff, you usually think summer, but no, this one is in the snow. But I guess when you're on the Orient Express, there are parts of that trip that would always have snow, and so it's not always going to be a summer warm read, but you would think that being on the train, you wouldn't have a lot of talk about snow because you're inside the entire time. But surprisingly, there are a few parts that has to deal with snow and being cold and stuff. So I think if you're a Riley Sager fan and you haven't gotten to this one, then this would be a good time to read it. And like I said, it takes place all on a train, so it's definitely a locked door mystery. And we have this woman who is trying to exact revenge upon these people that have ruined her family, and she invites them all on this train unbeknownst to them so that she can not necessarily kill them, but just like confront them and make them feel guilty for what they did. But one of the people on this train ends up being murdered, and it wasn't her. And so now she's like, crap, there's a killer on this train that's going to derail my own plans. So she's trying to figure out who it is. Okay, so that's all of the books that I have already read. So the rest of these books that I'm going to talk about are all on my TBR for January. I don't know that I'll get to all of them. I hope I will, but the reality is probably not. But I was able to read a lot of books in December, so I'm hopeful. But usually after I have a really good month, I tend to and then only read 4 or 5 books or something. So we'll see, but I have high hopes. But the first one is called Someone at the Door by Richie Tantersley Cusick, and this is a YA novel that's vintage. This came out back in the 80s and is kind of in the same vein as R.L. Stine. And I just love this cover with this little guy that's stuck in a snowman. I think that's kind of funny. And there's actually an R.L. Stine book called The Snowman where somebody does get put in a snowman. So I just think that's kind of funny. But anyways, so I thought it'd be a quick, easy read to get to this January. And I don't really know much about it, but I think there's these two teenage girls that go to the ski lodge or something, and these two guys end up being there as well that they weren't expecting, and they get snowed in by a blizzard, so they don't know if they can trust these guys or not. I think that's what it's about. And then we've got One by One by Ruth Ware, and this is another one that you've probably already heard of and probably already read because it came out quite a while ago. But I've only personally read one Ruth Ware book, which was Turning of the Key, and I really, really enjoyed it. I haven't read anything else by her, and so I thought now would be a good chance to read a snowy read from her for January. This is also a Locked-Away mystery about this group of people that get snowed in. I think it's like a work retreat or something. I think they're co-workers or they're all learning about some new technology or something. I don't know. But I do know that the house that they're going to or the retreat or whatever it is very high tech apparently. And so think of the house from like the Stepford Wives, if you've seen that movie, where the doors all lock themselves and the AI talks to you to tell you there's no milk in the fridge or whatever. And actually, now that I think about it, the Turn of the Key also had a high-tech house, actually. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, that's really all I know about. I think this takes place in the Alps, so they're probably going there to ski or something. But anyways, like I said, you've all probably already read or heard about this, but I haven't. So I am looking forward to getting to it, hopefully this month. And then I have a couple of Frida McFadden books. I've also only read one Frida McFadden book, and that was The Housemaid, which was for a video, and so I thought I'd check out more of her books. So we have Never Lie, and this one is about this couple who are looking at houses, and so they go to see this really, really remote manor out in the English countryside, but they get snowed in, and even the realtor that's supposed to show them the house doesn't show up, and so they end up being at this empty house, but they get snowed in by this blizzard, so they end up staying here for a few days. And they find out that this is actually the house where this psychiatrist woman went missing, and so they don't know that she was murdered, but it's presumed that she was murdered, but they never found a body. And so they're kind of creeped out to be living for a few days in this house where this woman disappeared, and they keep hearing these strange noises and wondering if somebody's there, but they check the house many times and they never find anyone. But they're like, there's got to be someone living here because all of these things happen, like they'll see a light on, or there's a half-drunk glass of water on the counter or whatever. So anyways, I hear good things about this one, so I'm excited to read it. And then we have The Crash. This one has been making the rounds on the internet, so I'm sure you've heard of this one as well. And judging by the cover, it's definitely wintry. But this is about this pregnant woman who I believe gets in a car crash during the snowstorm, and then she's taken by this couple to their house where she can recover, and she can't leave, not only because of the snow, but because of this weird couple that might be a little bit more nefarious than what she initially thought. She thought this was a nice, sweet Samaritan type couple that's helping her, but now she's not so sure. So it definitely has Misery vibes, which intrigues me because Misery is definitely one of my favorite Stephen King novels of all time, and I don't expect it to be on par with Stephen King. I'm sure Misery is 10 times better than this, but even so, it might be fun, just to have another novel that's close to Misery, because I just love that trope and I love the plot of it. So it seems like it should be a fun time. And then we have Our Winter Monsters, and this is about this couple who's also driving in a snowstorm and get in a car accident, but they don't have to deal just with the snow and the blizzard and the car crash. They also have to deal with this snow monster. So this is kind of a creature feature book, but instead of an animal, it's a snow monster. And apparently this couple that's going on this ski trip together, it's kind of their last ditch effort to kind of repair the relationship because they haven't been getting along for the last year. They've been fighting a lot and their relationship has been corroding, and so they're hoping to rekindle the flames on this trip. But they get stuck out in the snowstorm with this monster. And I think the monster is supposed to be kind of a metaphor for their relationship, so every time they start to fight, this monster appears. So it's kind of like a parallel with their relationship, which I think is kind of fascinating. So I think this one will be a good wintry read. And then we have Where He Left Me by Nicole Bart. And I just barely got this one from Book of the Month, which is good timing because, you know, it looks like there's snow on this roof. So I'm pretty sure this takes place in the winter time. And there's this woman who is living at this house with her husband, and he ends up going on some kind of a work trip or something, and he doesn't come back home when he says he's going to come home. And so she's left alone in this house, and a blizzard comes, so she gets stuck in this house by herself. And so I think she starts to like realize that her husband isn't everything that he said he was or something. And so she's going through this house to see if she can find any clues. And then it sounds like somebody unexpected ends up at her house, as always happens in these type of books. And so she has to deal with this new person or people, and, you know, all of the distrust that comes with that when you're stuck together in this house in a snowstorm. So sounds like a typical thriller, but it sounds like it should be fun. And then we have Quorum House. This is about an orphanage, and it has that bad reputation of being abusive to the orphans, and which is very, very terrible and very, very sad. But this little boy who's being taken care of by this nuns, because I believe that Quorum House, this orphanage, is being overseen by nuns, and they're supposed to be watching them, and this little boy ends up being drowned in the lake. And so they don't know if it was an accident or if it was murder. And so many years in the future is when our story takes place, and we have this, our main character is a journalist, and she's going to go see if she can drag up any more clues about this story about this little boy. So sounds like it should be fun. And I don't know, I'm a sucker for covers like this that have like these out of the way houses on the covers, you know. I don't know, I'm a sucker for a cool house on the cover, which maybe sounds dumb, but it's true. And then I have a couple of romances that I want to get to. One is Once Upon a Rose. Judging by the cover and the title, I bet you can guess what this is. This is a fairy tale retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and it's very, very short. It's like 217 pages. So I'm expecting this just to be cute and cozy. And I actually started reading this in the summertime, but I read the first 2 chapters and it was very, very snowy and talked a lot about snow. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to save this for the winter. So that's what I did. And then the last book is Any Trope But You, and this one takes place in Alaska, and we have our main character who is a romance author, but she's having a hard time in her own love life, and so she's not really into writing the happily ever afters, you know. And so she starts writing happily never afters where, you know, it ends in divorce, or, you know, it's not a happily ever after ending. And I think it was just for her as kind of a cathartic thing, but it gets leaked to the public, and so all of her romance readers are outraged by this, and how could you write this book that has this terrible ending? And so she kind of gets canceled, and so she decides that she's going to take a break from doing the whole romance thing, and she's going to write a murder mystery novel for the first time and kind of lean into her angst instead of fighting against it to write these sappy love stories. And so her sister books her a 6-week stay at this Alaskan lodge where she starts to fall for the proprietor, who doesn't really want to be there, but he's looking after his ailing father, and he doesn't want to fall in love with somebody that's just going to leave him, because he's already dealing with the possibility of his dad leaving, as in death. But then she also has a checkout date, and so he's like, well, after the 6 weeks she's going to go back to her life and I'm just going to be alone, so I shouldn't get involved with her. But as always happens, they can't help themselves, you know. But it sounds like it should be cute, and I don't read very many romances that take place during the winter, and so I end up reading a lot of romances during, you know, the warmer months and not so much during the winter months. So I'm glad to find one that would fit the bill for reading this time of year. So I actually already read the first chapter a while ago because it sounded really good and I wanted to read it. But then, just like what happened to Once Upon a Rose, I was like, oh, I should save this for winter. So the first chapter was already really good and sucked me in. So I have high hopes for this one. So that's all of them. That's all the books I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you found ones that you maybe haven't heard about before, or maybe ones that have gone under the radar that you've forgotten about that you want to add to your TBR. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up to let me know. Please subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined. I post every Friday, or at least, 3 Fridays a month in this case going forward. And I hope to see you in the next one. See ya.